Hello everyone. Can you just see the chat like it's in like normal PC? So if I'm audible, so just type yes in the chat. Like I just wanna check like if I'm audible or not. So can you just type yes in the chat?
सुद्धा में
Okay.
तुझ्या वेगळे हो
आता
Nice, nice. Okay. So we'll just start in 1 2 minutes. Hi Rishit.
Hello.
हॅलो
Hi Rishi. Hi Rishi. So yeah. Hi Vivek. Hello DK King Satyam Rohit and all. So yeah, like I'm just waiting. Like we had scheduled it for 7:30, so I'm just waiting. Like we can just start in 30 40 seconds maybe. Hi Abir, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm also good. So Rishi, so the glitch from like this one loophole in Discord. Like if you turn on your camera, so the limit of VC reduced to 25 only.
Uh,
Okay, so that's the problem. So yeah, so we can just start with the session, I guess. I just want you all guys to type just one in the chat, like so that I can just get some energy or something like that. So if I'm audible and if I'm properly audible, so just type one in the chat. You can just write one in the chat. I can't see it. Like I don't think so. I'm audible. Is I'm audible? Yeah. I can see just only three, four, ones. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So yes. So yeah, let's start with the fourth session of the open source week, and that's all about let's as the title of the session is let's as open source. So we do have really two good speakers with us. First is Abir Pal, who is Async API mentee and software developer. Second is Rishit Dagli, who is high school student, TEDx speaker, and really good, great open source enthusiast. So yeah, let's start with the session. First of all, let's begin with Abir. Abir, can you just introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Abir, and I'm like open source engineer, developer at Async API. I try to write code for event-driven architectures. And recently, I have graduated, and in 2022, and this is how like my journey is so far. Apart from it, I've been more active. I've been actively contributing to the MLH community as a fellow, and always like open to help people out there. So yeah, that's all, Vinayak.
Great, great, really great. I'm very glad to have you here. So, Rishit, can you just give you a short introduction? So, yeah.
Sure. Hello, I'm Rishit, and and as Vinayak was just talking about, I'm a student, and I also have been pretty connected with the open source community, and you'll often find me working and contributing to projects, including but not limited to TensorFlow, Kubernetes, Kubeflow. Okay. Yeah. So let's continue. I also like creating my own open source projects, and some of which have been pretty popular. And I usually work in the machine learning space, but that's not to say that's not what this talk will be about. Uh, so yeah, that is about me, and I also particularly love research and hackathons. So you'll find me participating in those as well.
Great, great. So, guys, see, we do have two really good open source enthusiasts who has contributed to various open source projects and all. So if you have any doubts regarding anything related to open source, you can just ask them. You can just mute yourself and you can just put your doubts in the chat. So before that, like I would like Abir to have to go. So I would like Abir to present his presentation or whatever he wanna share about his journey and whatever he wanna uh, uh, tell the audience about his knowledge regarding open source. So yeah, Abir, can you just go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Vinayak. So I'll be
Yeah,
directly sharing my screen. We can start further. Let me just share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen.
guys, if you see the screen of Abir, can you just type yes in the chat?
Oh, yeah, it's loading, I guess. So I don't know.
It's loading for me too.
It's loading. Let me share this. Okay, I'll share my entire screen. That will be better. Can you see my screen now? No,
Not really.
not really. Okay. Can you see now?
No, it's loading.
It's loading.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this is weird.
yeah,
Okay,
can you
let me
just
just start directly by
yeah,
audio
yeah, sure,
itself.
sure.
So
Yeah,
this
sure.
is even the presentation that I have. You will be hearing. So this is me, Abir. I'm Async API Mentee 2022 and also an upcoming TSC member at Async API. So here we are going to talk about open source, and initially we are going to talk about what is open source and why we need it. So let's do that first, and then we'll deep dive in more complex things. So first of all, whatever you write, which is open to public and people can access it, and people can read it, modify it, that is called as open source. Just putting up in a simple definition initially. Then afterwards, you can have modifications towards it, like creating licenses that you can use it for just for these purposes, not for commercial purpose. All these things sometimes comes under licenses. So, but yeah, majorly it is something which is publicly available, and you can access it, modify it, or use it for your own self. So that's what open source is. And why do we need it? Because it just comes, sometimes it comes, as you know, that we have different problems around the world, and we, at being an engineer or specifically a software engineer, you try to solve things out, right? Making, suppose you want to make a bookmark manager, right? Okay, fine. Let's take an example of bookmark manager, and you try to open source it. People are using it, and now people are have really productive while managing their bookmarks. So this is what one of the apps that you can consider as an open source application, and people are using it. So there you are creating an impact, right? So that's why the pretty much reason that you need to, like, why we need open source. Even whatever browser or like not browser, whatever operating system or Android system is built on top over Linux. So Linux is again the Linux kernel is again open source software. So people are using it fully. That's what the whole idea is behind open source. Like, it's publicly accessible and you can actually modify it and own the things up. So that's what open source is, and that's why we need it. So what it has for students and engineers. So initially, like when we start with our programming journey, the most difficult part is knowing what will happen next, right? How are we going to code in the company, or how the code will look like, whatever it is, right? So the open source programs, or like different open source projects, helps you to do that. There are tons of open source organizations. For example, Async API is one of them, which helps you to learn about event driven architectures. And people and students, those who get involved, they get to know about what is what is the whole workflow for writing code in open source. Like, it is not just about coding things out. As I said, open source is anything that is publicly accessible. It can be your blog even, or it can be your Twitter tweet also. So it's just something which is publicly accessible. And similarly, as I was focusing on what it has for students, so students get to learn how the whole organization, like whenever you go to any company or do any job, or even build your own startup, you need to follow some principles, right? You need to follow some workflow strategies. So these open source organizations helps you to know about these workflow strategies and how they build and ship products. There are tons of great open source organizations. One is Async API, which I said. Then another one is Travis CI. Then you will find it in GSOC, Google Summer of Code Archive. There are a lot many other open source repositories or organizations working on. One finest example that I can recall is of React team, the one React that we use in our web engineering. So what happens whenever you push to React, you cannot directly push to React. You have to first get it done, get it reviewed, your proposal via a particular team member, TSC member, and then it moves forward. Otherwise, it will be a stale request. So all these processes that happens in a company is actually being followed in these major organizations. Initially, it is kind of daunting task that okay, where to contribute, how to contribute, but with time, with more learnings, with some basic building blocks, you get to know and you get up the ladder for writing better applications. And for example, if you are already graduated or you know about few things and you are in your freshman or you are in your sophomore or penultimate year, there for engineers it has something like you know some basics. Now you can brush up the things, right? So for brushing up the things, you need to know about different libraries and what do you say, different kind of strategies and hacks that we use in open source, like while building different applications. I know that there may be folks that who are completely into DSA and competitive programming, and that's perfectly fine. And we also need binary tree inversion in open source too. So, for example, one finest example that I can remember is of React's set state and React use hooks. So usually use hook maintain a queuing service, and the whole service is written using a different queue mechanism that has been implemented in JavaScript. So there's the concept of whole data structures algorithms also come into play. So there you get to know about where to apply things, and you get to know the whole picture that why are you learning software engineering and how you can put more impact. So yes, it has a lot of things. Open source has a lot of things. It can get you to a different destination. I have seen folks who are not even having great CGPA, but they get placed very heavily and maybe outside sometimes. Initially, in the years of 2018, 2019, few of my friends they graduated and they were completely shifted to open source companies, and they have been given visa and everything. So don't focus on that, but I'm just sharing with you that all these things happen when you contribute very effectively to the open source. So, and even their finest, one of the finest examples recently happened with my batchmate Sovic. He is now in Postman, and trust me, there were no interviews conducted for him because he was like contributing to Postman from like 7 months, and a lot of PRs were merged. So the engineering director, the engineering manager of Postman knew his name is Maman. He actually offered him the direct job for senior
Okay,
engineer
let's
there.
begin with the
That's
GNU
how the whole
General
thing
Public
shifted.
License, or
When
GPL.
Postman
In
came to our
2021, the
campus, they were
GPL and
hiring for
all
junior
its
engineers, but
versions
now
and
from our campus, they have now a senior engineer. So that's
variants
how
represented about
open source helps you to know
21%
the
of
things,
all
right?
fast
And you actually need to know about the stuff. It takes time, right? It takes learning. You need to know. You need to pick first language. What language that you want to do stuff? Okay, explore and pick language whatever you like, and try to master that. I will say if you are using, most of the folks are using either JavaScript or Python. So just explore and pick one of them. I'll say JavaScript or Python because there you get the mentorship, right? Because a lot of folks are there and people can mentor you. So you can easily find the mentor for your initial language. So once you master that language, you can like shift to any other languages because you know the grasp or you know the concepts inside of a language. That's why it's very important to know a language first and then proceed further. And sometimes knowing the basics of language also works, and with time and with contributions you realize different functions, different language features or gimmicks that you say are visible when you like are explorable when you code, like this is what happens, and that's what students and engineers get to know while contributing to open source, and they build more connections, networks, and that's the like what you say the beauty of open source. You get a good network and suppose just imagine that most of the hirings, if you
licenses
observe,
used.
most of the hirings that college tells us is by placement department, but If you contribute to open source, you have a good network. Yeah. Sorry. Hello. Okay. I hope it's audible. Yeah. Okay, so if you contribute to open source, you get a good network of engineers and a lot of folks that who are contributing to it. So there you get a nice idea, like okay, how to collaborate with people, and how to write code in collaboration. Also maintaining docs and so many things down there. So you learn a lot. There are endless number of things that like open source has for you. Just need to try it out and give it a shot. Next thing, my journey so far in open source started back in 2019 or 2018. Yep. So there I started with first to do app. Then I went through how to use Git and all. So basically, merge rebase and get full rebase and all this stuff. So basics of Git are really important. Then you need to know about shallow cloning. Like when you have large repositories about around 2.5 GB and such large, how do you clone it into a system? So for that reason, you have to do shallow clone, and then you learn about shallow clone. That's how you progress. Like even there are some mysterious parts of Git that I haven't explored it yet, but there are still some there. So you need to like when the things arrive, you need to just figure it out and just
Yes, I'm
know the
saying
things. So that's
variants
why
and
basics of Git
versions
is really
because the
important. How
GPL
to do
is
merge
used
and
in
all this
many
stuff.
forms,
That's
namely the
important, and
GPL
creating a
version
pull
3,
request.
its older version, GPL
Mostly
v2,
like when I
and also
started
its lesser
this
versions, the
to do
LGPL.
and all this, I
Yes,
ignored Git
fragmentation
initially
also
and
exists
used the
since
GitHub desktop UI. That time it was in beta, as far as I recall, and it was quite easy using GitHub desktop. But later on, realized that okay, we need to know the Git commands because sometimes we write different configuration files, and not every time GitHub desktop will be available to you. So that's how I got to learn about the Git and the core of Git, or what you say, not core exactly, but how to use Git effectively. Mostly, I'll mention few functions, like few operations that you need to really know, like merge, pull, rebase, and stash. Stash is really important whenever like if you have some changes done and you want to pull in the changes from the remote branch or the branch in somebody else post. So you can just stash your changes, view the changes, and apply this. So this is like a temporary kind of a box where all your changes are saved, and once you are done with viewing all the rest of the other remote changes, you can pull down your own changes. So that's what a stash is. So you can explore a bit more over there. Next, like I participated in Gulf Script Summer of Code. There I got a nice mentor, and he actually helped me out with writing a few like with contributing to few other projects. Like they have a project with plant disease app, and I contributed there. I got to know how to collaborate with people. So yes, it's really important to know like how to like collaborate with people and while you're writing code, because sometimes what happens, somebody has written a code and you are just messing up with the old code, and you have to update your branch. So that's what you get to know, how things are happening. So that's the most important thing, I will say. Apart from after that, I was doing my like basic open source work at Async API. So we can we got connected, and he was also contributing, and I was also contributing to very basic minor issues post. Initially, everything happens with a typo, and afterwards, I got into MLH fellowship in 2021. And post MLH fellowship, I actually learned a lot about how cryptography works, and then built our portfolio and stuff. So yeah, it was nice experience so far, and I developed a strong liking towards JavaScript because of its features and how it's been progressing. But don't get me wrong that I didn't only work with JavaScript. I worked with Scala, and I worked with Python too. So yeah, those are two languages that I worked with Python. But JavaScript is something. It was my first language, and that's why the impression is still there. And I pick up anything. So that's what I will say if you are starting with the things. And yes, if you are into C++, yeah, I'll say like when C++ is required, whenever you are writing your machine level or system level which you write at sometimes senior, very senior level roles. Nobody hires a C++ developer for a junior role, either like if it is not a startup, like for a good company or big companies or any established company, well established company, they don't hire for junior C++ developers. So you know what you have to do. So you have to just figure out the things like either JavaScript, Python, or take up any other like good languages that you feel are really helpful to you. So just focus on that and build things over it.
So just
And
adding to, yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences on all. So just adding to that, like Rishit is someone who is who has started open source contribution in very early age. So I just wanna ask Rishit to add some points from his side, like just to share his journey so far, and just to add one question, like Abir, can you just mute yourself? Like I guess there is echo. Is it fine now? Is there is any echo? Can you someone write in the chat yes or no? So yeah, I don't think so. There is no echo. So I just wanna ask Rishit to share his journey so far because he has started. Abir has mentioned that you should start picking up language very effectively. Like you should think before starting contributing to open source. Like you have to pick your language and all. So I wanna ask Abir, sorry Rishit, that what's his journey so far and how one should start his open source journey. Like we most of the us here are of like in our like freshman or second year or third year. So yeah, Abhi, can you just Rishit, can you just tell me about your journey so far?
Sure, sure. I would love to share a bit about how I made my step in open source, and it was actually quite a while back due to a program, which I'll talk about, and some of the key things I've picked up, and those could most certainly help you, also help you find the motivation for open source. So I'll start sharing my screen, and I hope it would be visible. Just let me know once it's visible. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, wait, it's loading. Yeah, I can see now. Yeah, it's really.
I would hope it's the same for others too.
Can everyone write yes in the chat, like if it's visible or not? It's visible for both
Okay,
of you
awesome,
only. Tag
awesome,
chat.
awesome.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Great. So one of the nice aspects of doing it in a Discord-like environment is also that you can ask me questions. So yeah, that's pretty nice as well. So some really nice points shared by Abir, and I totally resonate with them. Hi everyone. I'll go right past this. That was just a bit about me, which when I kind of covered pretty well. And I'll also, instead of talking about what is open source, which has been talked about, I want to add a couple of things over here. And you should, open source is, as Abir was just talking about, uh, all the code, all the documentation, all the other aspects which are open to the community. You can make improvements over there, and I would actually urge you to think of this much like a social network, and you'll soon see why I'll urge you to think of this much like a social network. And if you talk about why you should care about open source and why you should care about open source, I actually mean why you should care about contributing or creating open source projects, contributing to other projects, and not just the benefits of open source in general. So there are there are pretty popular repositories out there. These are probably some of the most popular ones out there. At least some of the ones I've personally used, and these have been empowering millions of developers. These have been used by millions of developers, and all of these are open source code bases used in multiple production applications, and you could essentially contribute to these. By contribute, I mean you could actually make an impact on all the folks that use it, all the developers that use it, all the end users that use it, which is even more. So you can make this kind of impact with open source, just contributing to make the software you use better for everyone. So that is definitely one of the top things which has led me personally to open source. I've been contributing a lot to TensorFlow and Kubernetes, and one of the main reasons I contribute to both of these projects is because they are used by. Uh, sorry. Okay. I'll just continue. Because they impact millions of folks worldwide, and I have the opportunity to make it better for others. I've been using it myself, so that is definitely one of the things that motivates me. To give you an idea, there are more than 42 million public open source repositories on GitHub alone, and even more on other platforms. So there are definitely a lot of open source repositories. A lot of people are making their work open source, and uh, that might be a really nice thing. And I just talked about my what has been my motivation to contribute to open source, but I also wanted to touch upon this aspect which I think we have not covered until yet, which is, well, do you have to be an absolute expert to contribute? If you're contributing to, let's say, Kubernetes or TensorFlow, do you need to know every single thing in the code base? The code base is pretty huge, probably millions of lines of code, uh, if not more. So, do you need to know absolutely every single thing? Uh, and well, the answer is you don't have to know absolutely every single thing. There are multiple avenues for you to contribute, which we'll also touch upon. And uh, talking about do you have to know everything comes the other question, does it even have to be code? So, code is definitely one of the parts of open source we talked about. And a lot of people do contribute code, which is a nice way to make an impact to open source. But I just wanted to put it out there that if you might not be a developer at all, if you not might not be writing code, you can still make the impact on a great open source, big open source projects, and still make a very sizable impact, a very big impact to great open source projects. It does not necessarily have to be code. You should not even to contribute code. You don't need to know absolutely every single thing about the project. The best way to contribute for me personally has been, oh, I'm using this open source project myself. So I was using TensorFlow a lot. So I thought about why not contribute and make it better. So that was my way of thinking it, but it definitely does not have to be code, and you can still make great impact.
So adding to
So
that only, I just wanna ask like Abir, like what was your first contribution and how did you feel and what was it? Abir, can you just tell about it? Abir, are you there? I don't think so. Abir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. There was some
Huh.
glitch.
Haha. So I just want to ask one question. Like Rishi just told that you don't need to be pro. You not need to be pro to start with open source, and you not need to be know like only code or something like that to contribute in open source. I just want to ask you, like, what was your first contribution and how did you feel it and how was it?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, open source is not just about writing code or anything like that, but it's more about it can be anything like which is publicly accessible. So, as I said, again, I'm repeating this. It's not just about code. So, keep it this in mind that you need not learn to code in order to contribute to open source. It can be like maintaining docs or managing docs or be a documentation engineer
तो ये मेरा फीडबैक है
for open
रियलमी
source
के लिए
organization.
और अगर
From
बात
my
करें
first
इनके अपडेट्स
experience,
की
I
क्या
was
हाल है
introduced to
अपडेट्स में
code,
हाल बहुत
and
अच्छे नहीं
that's
है
why I have been there
ये
itself. And I
प्रीमियम
did
टाइप
manage
होते हैं
docs for
जिसकी
Travis
कंपटीशन के
CI
लिए तो Xiaomi
for
में जैसे
around
Redmi
8 months
Note
as a
10
maintainer there, but then I dropped off because I was not enjoying documentation work. That's why pretty much I'll say it's based on your interest. If you like to code, then do the code. if you like to maintain
So
document.
what was your first contribution? Like, can you just tell about it? Do you remember it? Like,
Yeah, I
what was
built
your
a
first?
to-do app. Yeah, yeah, sure. So I built a to-do app. I don't know if it's still there on my GitHub, but I built a to-do app and pushed to the GitHub. That was my first open source contribution, I will say. And afterwards, contributing to other organizations, my other organization like which I tried to contribute was Docusaurus for a typo fix, but it was not merged. So still, it is a contribution, I will say, because I spent my time, I gave my time over there. So if you are giving your time, that means you are contributing to something. So yes, I contributed my time in understanding the things, but still it didn't work out. So it's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah. So Abir has the first contribution of Abir was code. So Rishi, can you just tell about like, does it have to be code only or not?
No, it actually doesn't necessarily have to be code. And this slide, I think, does a nice job at uh, talking about a bit about like what other revenues you can use apart of just code. So yeah, I mean, you could do the documentation, you could do outward facing community work, you could you could
सीरीज है
work on
या
writing
चाहे वो डिजिटल के
tutorials, answer questions, and there's just so much non-code contributions you can do as well. And all of these are very, very impactful to a project. They are not, let's say, lesser than contributing code in any single way. So, in fact, if you want to take a better look at it, I would definitely recommend you to watch this talk. This is a really great talk on your part to non-code contributions. And I'll send a link to the slides, and you'll just find the link to this talk for the motivated listener uh, through the slides. Okay, so that was like about the non-code contributions.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So do you have more slides to share?
Yeah, a couple of things about as well doing.
I have
Sure.
few slides. So once Rishit gets complete, I will share mine. Like
Yeah,
this.
sure. We can just go ahead now. Also, like, we don't want it to be like too formal or something like that. It should be like some chill thing. So yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, let Rishi complete like whatever he has. Then
yeah.
Xiaomi के
So
मतलब मैंने जितने फ़ोन एक्सपीरियंस किए बहुत ही डिफरेंट
cool.
डिफरेंट डिज़ाइन और
Looking forward to
सारे
your
ही
slides.
प्रीमियम टाइप होते हैं जिस भी
So,
रेट में ये आते हैं मैंने नोटिस ये
the
किया है
first
और
and
ये बहुत
foremost
ही
thing
एक
I'll
अच्छा
tell you
चीज़ लगता
is
है मुझे लेकिन हाँ ये इनके जो
this
फ़ोन
is
होते हैं
how
ना
I
थोड़े चौड़े
started.
टाइप होते हैं मैंने भारी नहीं
Open
कहा
source
मैंने
your
बल्कि वो
projects.
वाला नहीं
Don't
कहा
be
लेकिन होता नहीं है
afraid.
थोड़ा थोड़ा
If it's a small
समझ
project,
लेंगे आप
just
कहने का
open source
मतलब
it.
इनके साथ
If it's a big project, you'll definitely find a lot better ways. A lot of things that are, let's say, lacking in your project. A lot of things that can be improved. So that's always some great feedback from the community. You'll have the community pitch in. So so the first thing I would say is just open source
कैमरे
your
का
projects
एक्सपीरियंस भी
right
अच्छा
away.
मिलता है ओवर
Just do it
सैचुरेटेड
today,
कलर्स आते हैं
please.
जितने Xiaomi
And
के
you'll
फ़ोन
soon
नॉर्मली
yeah, and you'll soon see the benefit of it. But just take me for the moment. So I would ask you to start out by if you're trying to open source your project, which is what I would suggest you to do as an action item. If you want to, if you're kind of excited by this, then the first thing I would ask you to do is find your motivation for a project. It does not necessarily have to be something out of the box, something really novel, right on the first go. It can be something that makes another project better. Um, I would then also ask you to research your idea. So the way I think about if creating an open source project is viable is of course thinking about well, would this project be helpful to anyone? And this is a very hard question to answer. So I do not take this question, and I rather answer the question: if there was an open source project like the one I'm making, would I use it? If the answer is yes, I just make it. Yeah. If the answer is no, is there someone who would benefit from it, and something that excites me in making that project? So if that's so, I just go on and work on creating an open source project. So I would definitely say try to answer that question. And you can also see if, as I said, it does not have to be something entirely new. Another yeah, another exercise I like is called LFI, which is try to explain your project like I'm five. And this is something I do very often before creating my open source projects, so I can validate if I have a good understanding of what my open source project aims to do, uh, and what value does it bring. And finally, I also urge you to ask the questions: what can you learn from great repositories in similar categories? This particular question has taught me so much, so much. Uh, I've indeed learned whole new languages or whole new frameworks. I learned the idea of unit testing or testing your code just through this one question. I'm asking myself one question: what can I learn from great repositories in similar categories? So this is definitely something I would ask you to do, and has had huge impact on my journey. Finally, like I'll not go into a lot of depth, but if you want to know more, there is a link to a blog I wrote, and this talks a lot about how I build my open source projects in a lot more detail, and how I also got them to be popular. Uh, yeah. So I'd also say like there's a really nice connect between open source and communities. So this is just one of my favorite communities out there, in the GitHub Campus Experts program. And you could most certainly be part of communities who would help you share their experience, build projects together, learn from others, collaborate with others. All of those aspects are pretty necessary for open source, and will help you learn a lot. I'm not saying a particular community is necessary. You don't need to be a part of any one community to succeed. You can do it without a particular community, but all I'm saying is this could be a really great avenue for you to learn. So you should definitely give it a look. Uh, this could help you. This could also help you develop some of your other soft skills, network with others, which is undoubtedly super helpful. I, a couple of student programs I've personally loved and been a part of are as follows. Uh, Abir and I both are actually in the were in the MLH fellowship, sorry, and both of us are Postman student leaders. That's actually how I met Abir for the first time. So definitely the networking aspect is not lost here. I got to meet him and many other folks from the community. Just a prime example of networking. Another thing which you get in open source is also mentorship. So this is like a prime example of one of the yeah, from the chat. I'll drop a link to my slides, and in the slides you'll find every single link I talked about. Oh yeah, yeah. The person there are a couple of questions on how to access the links. I'll share those. Don't worry. So another thing you can expect from open source contributions is a lot of mentorship, and be ready to give mentorship as well. So this is just a contribution I was making at the right, and I thought I had been using TensorFlow for quite some while, and I was just making this contribution, and Francois Colette, who's the creator of Kirish, and is a he actually mentored me a lot, and this has happened to me in other communities as well, with Free Code Camp, with TensorFlow, with Kubernetes, and a lot more. So I cannot stress on how important mentorship is in communities and open source, and contributing to open source is a very nice way to get the mentorship. I would never have probably got mentorship from folks like Francois Goulet or Quincy Larson, who's the founder of Free Code Camp, or a ton of others whom I can name. And all of these opportunities, mentorship opportunities, were open through open source. You can always get some recognition for your open source for the open source you do as well. uh, there are often things like the top contributor award and trust levels as well. So there's definitely a lot get. You could get some recognition. That could be one of your kind of motivations. I would ask you not to make it one of the motivations, but it definitely does feel good. And Abir and I already talked a lot about impact in one of the previous questions. I'll slide right past this. Um, uh, yeah, one of the main things you'll also get with open source is great networking and collaboration opportunities. And in the field of software, in the field of computer science, I couldn't stress more on how important networking is. I've personally got so many opportunities, so much learning just from networking with other people, and and I most certainly believe Abir has had a lot of success with networking and through the benefits of networking as well. So networking is definitely one of the biggest things I look to get from open source and communities. It helps me grow. Uh, you can just learn so much from others. This is actually a photo of one of the conferences, KubeCon, and we had networking. Tables like these, just people talking about open source. People who had made contributions were a part of the same special interest group, uh, and it was undoubtedly a lot of learning. And there is a lot more, which could be your motivation for open source. These were definitely some of my motivations. Uh, Finally, I'll go a bit quick and ask Abhi to present next. But the last section just talks about some opinionated tips I have being a part of open source. So the first is don't be afraid to ask. Um, and never be afraid to ask anyone if you are struggling with something. I've had back when I was starting, I really didn't know how to rebase. And I asked that question. Someone explained it to me. Just a couple of days ago, someone was making a PR on one of my repositories, and I passed on the knowledge. So there are some there are some great things you can do just through asking. So first off, don't be afraid to ask. And open source is as much as a take as much of a take as it is give. So if you know about something, give a talk, work on an open source project, contribute back to a project, or go be open to giving as well. And I'll also ask you to go outside your comfort zone. So never be afraid to just go up and say hi to others. So that go up and say hi works especially well in in-person setting. But you essentially get the idea, the motive where I was going with it. A really nice talk by Stephen Alexis. He heads a special interest group at Kubernetes. Is the API is people. This is an awesome talk. I had the pleasure of listening to this in person, and I'd love to share the recording with you all. So definitely watch this talk. This talk actually talks about why it is so important to have the people aspect or the community aspect in open source, probably even more than the code. So that's an awesome talk. So that's about my slides. I'll share this link in the chat, so you'll get all the other links from there. So that was it for my slides, and I would most certainly ask of you to go ahead and present. I'm looking forward to his content.
Sure. Thanks so much, Rishit, that you have talked about it, and really, that was a really valuable. Yeah, we met during this my student freedom meetup, and yes, that's again another different story. We can have a session on completely. Yeah, let's. I'm not able to share the slides here. I don't know why, but let me continue for the most important point that I was about to tell last time. That you have to think.
Abir, can you just try once, like
Okay,
this time maybe like you can able to share the
yeah, okay,
slides.
sure, sure. It's, it keeps on loading. I don't know why. Maybe I have to update my
Uh,
Discord. I'm not sure what exactly it is. But yeah, we can find.
Yeah, okay, it's fine.
Yeah,
You can just go
yeah.
ahead.
So the next point that I was talking about was for the especially for the students, those who get like those who watch different YouTube videos and get messed up with open source terminology and what the people can say about it. So you the thing is, you have to think beyond GSOC or Outreach or any other open source program. Just think beyond it. Open source is not equal to GSOC or anything like that. GSOC helps you to get into the open source stuff, but it is not just about open GSOC or anything, any paid programs like this. Okay, so it's like irrespective of the GSOC period, irrespective of any program. If you're liking open source, pick up a project, contribute to it. You get to know the things. It's just about feeling towards open source. Okay, it's not about something. It is like it's participating in GSOC, so I should contribute here. If you recall, like I don't know how many of you can think like recall to this or async API was never an organization for GSOC, and we all started there itself. And that's how things happened. Then people started donating async API money, and then we had our own GSOC kind of stuff, that async API mentorship program, where there were different proposals being sent. And it's again a paid mentorship program. So there you get 1500 USD for your all kind of work that you do in the particular period of time allotted. So this whole thing, this whole idea of what you say, reimbursing, or what I'll say, reimbursing the developer effort or the open source engineer who is working. So the thing is, you need to understand here. It's not about just getting the money or just getting the benefits out of it. You need to think beyond of GSOC or outage. You need to think about the life cycle of the project. That whatever you are contributing, is it making any impact? Is it having any long-term goal or anything like that? This life, yeah. Hello. You want to interrupt me? Please go ahead. Okay.
I don't think so. Like there was background noise from someone, so yeah, you can just continue.
Yes, thanks for that clarification. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to say, that it's not just about GSOC or any outage. You don't get distracted or detract by the what do you say, different YouTube videos that exist and different guidance video. I've been into open source for more than 2 years. Rishit and Rishit has started more early than me, so we are always available there. But I don't make such I don't make YouTube videos, so sorry, I can't help you there. But what I can say is, don't just limit yourself to just GSOC or Outrage. They are just normal programs that helps people to like get started with open source. Before if you see before 2010, like when the like before GSOC even started, like I don't know, 2010 or 2005, I don't know exact year, but there are still people contributing to open source. So what was motivating them? It was the project life cycle or the project's mission, and how the long term vision for the project is. That was motivated. So that should be your motivation. Event driven architectures and how event driven processing works. Try to like come up over here. It's a good community, and a lot of people are very helpful. So you can try contributing, talking to people, join the Slack and stuff. So you'll find it in asyncAPI.com. You'll find every information there, how things are working. So this is about async API mentorship program. So far, any questions do you have? Rishit is also there, so we both can answer questions.
Yep.
Yeah. So there was one question like we just missed it. There was a question from Neo. Like I have some experience in Django. Any good open source project I can contribute to? Like, do you guys have any idea about Django?
Yeah, I worked a little bit with it, uh, and I haven't worked with it in a while, just because my interest changed. But I would say this that it is awesome that you have identified what you are interested in and are looking for open source projects to contribute to. I would first off recommend you to search for just search on GitHub for open source projects
Yeah,
that
and
use
now
Django,
people
and
are
you most
really
certainly
productive while managing
and
their
you can
open
quote me
source.
on
From
this,
which
you'll
side? Like,
100% find an open
just to
source
share
project. which uses Django, and uh, and contributors are always welcome in most of the open source projects. So I would recommend you go that route. I wouldn't be able to name some specific projects out there, uh, just because just because my field of interest changed a bit, and I haven't been into Django for quite a while. But I would say this is the way you would go, and this does not just go for Django. If there's someone else who
Sure,
probably
talk about
like some other
like
frameworks
what the
wants to
long-term
start
vision for the
contributing to
project
some
is. That was
other
motivation.
framework or other language, use the same approach. That's what I'd say.
Okay, got it. Hope
Yeah,
we all
and
your question has
also,
been answered.
uh, yeah, also you can go to the Django forum. There's a community there, about djangoproject.com/community, and you can like try to see what are the different people talking about there. As far as I know, they had also this user mailing list, which actually shows you some specific features that has been put up, product announcements, so you get to know. And also, they have a Discord server, so that's also there. So I think that you know about it. That yeah, you can join over there to connect with different folks. And once you join the Discord server, you will find various GitHub, like different number of GitHub projects made by people. Try to contribute over there. And currently, previous organization, I was working with Django. So this thing, uh, Django administration panel. Yeah, it was quite complex, but yeah, from like they were expecting to have Python skills from JS developers. So I learned about Python and all this stuff around 2 weeks. 2 weeks it took, and we started with that. So yeah, it's ideally you have to switch languages, frameworks. The one thing that you need to keep in mind is about what the problem you are solving. So yes, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, got it. So
Mhm.
someone is asking in the chat like if I should start contributing. If I'm so
Okay, I think we cannot hear Vinayak, but I'll just read the question and appear and I can go on. Uh, so if I should start contributing if I'm just started like 2 months ago. So one of the things I'll reiterate to it, Abir and I talked about greatly is you don't even need to be a developer to start contributing to open source projects. Um, you started 2 months ago, you probably like development, which is awesome. So you should definitely contribute to projects you are already using or are passionate about. As I was saying, you don't even need to be a developer to start contributing. There are a lot of non-code contributions you can do, and you most certainly don't need to be an expert to contribute. The barrier of entry is way lower than you would imagine. Or is there even a barrier of entry?
yeah, got it. Abhi, do you want to add any point over it?
I was like finding the question in which channel it is. Can you help me out?
Uh, yeah. Just wait a second. I'll just take it. Can you see it now? It's just in coding and tech we see. You will just see a icon of chat.
Yeah, got it. Open chat. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, so can I contribute with only basic? Yeah, you can contribute with only basic Python, but you have to have the mindset of growing with Python, because sometimes we feel that we know basic Python and we can contribute. That's not the case. You can start the contribution, but it's something like strength versus endurance, right? So you have the strength to contribute to Python. Okay, sorry. You have the strength to contribute to Python, but you need the endurance to continue your contributions. Like you need to know the sometimes some intermediate concepts of Python, so there you need to learn. So this just the thing of strength versus endurance. So you know what I'm talking about now. Yeah.
Okay. So there was one more question, I guess. I only know C++. Now, should I learn Python, Java, or any other language before contributing, or should I start with C++? There was this question by Rohit.
C++
Anyone of you?
is hard, man. C++ is really hard, I will say. How are you looking to contribute? I'm true to the things now. I find it hard, so I'm saying it hard. But see, I guess that you are a freshman in college at C++. So then think try to pick up JavaScript or Python and learn things about it, and then you can start contributing. I will say that don't just start with C++ because I started it. I faced a lot of issues, and you need to know system level things in order to get started with like contributing in open source with C++. And there's a lot of alternatives. Like when you master C++ while contributing, you are supposed to then know about Rust. Mostly what's happening these days, the system level languages like system level organizations or code is being converted to Rust, and folks having deep knowledge of C++ are able to do that. So you need to know about this. Yeah, so you can start with Python or JavaScript, or I don't know about Java, like who is using Java these days for open source contribution. But yeah, there are different companies they use, but I'm not sure. Like I haven't I haven't been into Java environment so much. So yeah, sorry for that. But you can use Python, JavaScript, or Java in fact too. So what about like I want to hear it from Rishit if you want to share any views here.
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not muted. Okay. So, sure. So, I would say like you can contribute in any language you like. Uh, the bar may be, uh, as Abir was saying, it might be a bit hard to learn C or C++, but that's just our personal experiences. And I would like most certainly encourage you if uh, la- if that's what you want to start out with, if that's something you're interested in, I'll most certainly encourage you to contribute to repositories which are using that language. Also, th- I would ask you to probably take a look at some of the tools you have been looking. So a pretty popular example here is a lot of the C++ libraries. Those are actually open source. So a very nice way would be to just contribute to them. You're already using them, and I would also say like don't be afraid to contribute to any particular language. So even if you like Java, there's a wonderful Kubernetes Java client. You can most certainly contribute to that, and there are a lot more projects which you could just search for. So this was just a single example. What I'd say is don't be afraid to contribute just because you know a single language. Uh, there are a ton of projects for every single language. Um, you'll definitely find stuff to contribute to if that's what you like.
Yeah, got it. Actually, I'm just sharing the slides of Rishit because we have uh, blocked the bit.ly links
Yeah,
in the server
that messed up the
because
chart so bad. So
yeah.
finally, like I think Ted's shared it. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, got it, yeah. So
thanks,
yeah,
thanks.
yeah, sure. So there was one more question from someone. Like, can you talk more about where to start open source from? Like, they have answered it, but yeah, Nishant wants key. You can just tell them some terms or some organization so that they can just Google it and they can just get to learn more about it.
Sure. So, uh, okay. So, um, you, you might have you might need to know a bit of Git, some of the basics of Git, and I would definitely recommend you to take a look at it first. You can also actually learn it on the go. There are a lot of GUI clients. If you don't necessarily want to make code contributions, you can most certainly go that route. But I would suggest getting your hands dirty with Git a bit, and then I would suggest going through. So contributing to open source is not anything different than you do while making a project. It's just the project is owned by someone else who would probably review your changes and then merge it over. So I think like if you have an idea of the project, if you have an idea of how the project is structured, then you could just learn a bit of Git. And believe me, there is no learning curve with Git as such. So I'll just just learn a bit of Git and get started to contribute to any project. If you don't know about the project or what your contributions might require, in that case, I would first recommend you to take a look at. So the usual framework I recommend is if you want to contribute to a project. So how do you contribute to a project now? Now that you have seen, this is something that excites me. So the first thing is you use the project yourself. Um the first thing is you probably use the project yourself. That is the best way to understand most of the things that the project does. Then a nice way would be to take a look at some good first issues. So a lot of projects maintain issues that are that might particularly be easy for contributors to fix. So you should definitely take a look at some good first issues, and also take a look at the contributing guidelines for a repository. So I think those would be that would be my framework to contribute to a new open source project.
Yeah, so that was a really great answer, Rishit. And I had another question. So, like, what kind of open source licenses are prevalent right now? Like the GNU public license and the MIT license. Can you educate us on that?
Sure. So okay, so I won't give you a legally binding answer, which I can't give. And if you are probably looking to make an open source project and have community uh, and planning to have it open source while giving away enterprise licenses and all of that stuff, you should most certainly talk to a lawyer. But just giving a brief overview of the licenses out there. So you'll see quite a few popular licenses, so called, and you could license your project. Licensing your project essentially means that you allow others to use your project in some way. So let's say if you don't have a license in your open source project, that means that you don't allow others to use your project in any way, do any kind of stuff with it. But having a license means you allow people to use your project. And most open source projects out there are either under the MIT or the Apache license, which I would recommend you to take a look at. You can easily do that. Abir shared an awesome link, which I was just about to share. So MIT and Apache are probably one of the most popular licenses out there. But to get to know a bit more about which license you should use. Oh yeah, I just pasted a link and it did not vanish. So if you want to know a bit more about uh, which license is the one that will work for your project, then I would definitely recommend you to take a look at the link.
Insightful answer. Abir and Rishit, the most favorite memory.
Sorry to interrupt. I was surprised that Vinayak turned into a girl suddenly.
Yeah, I'm Vaishnavi.
Okay, hi.
Hi, I was actually outside, so I couldn't be there in the beginning. Yeah, so I was asking, what is your most favorite memory, like a core memory from your entire open source journey? By the way, just like a quick introduction about me, I have been like contributing to open source for a while, and I'm one of the community managers here at BlueLearn. And if you've heard about anitabi.org, it's also like an open source organization. I volunteer as an admin over there.
So, I've actually heard of Anita that are they are also a shop project. That's nice to hear. So, talking about my favorite memory from open source, I think it definitely has to be. Uh, so, so there was. so I was just contributing to open source, and I ended up networking with a couple of folks from CNCF, and owing to my like open source contributions to Kubernetes, I was actually invited to give a talk at KubeCon. So KubeCon North America this year, and KubeCon is like a pretty big conference, 30,000 folks attend in person. So I think that would be like one of my best memories from open source. I most certainly learned a ton contributing to Cloud Native Computing Foundation, but getting recognized and having the platform to share my experiences, all of that was just through open source. Like the networking aspect of open source is a big win for me, and this is my favorite memory. But
Thank you for the answer, Rishit. So we have another question in the chat. So he's asking
oh
like
yeah,
how,
yeah,
yeah, so how can we earn money through open source? I don't think you can, but like in some cases, like licensing the product to companies, you answer.
sure. So actually, you can earn money through open source.
Oh,
I was
really?
just waiting if Abir wanted to answer the earlier question.
Yeah, I was actually interested for this one, so you can answer this one, then I'll go further.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of the open source work is actually voluntary, but uh, but but if you want to, let's say, earn money through open source, uh, a lot of folks also a lot of folks often have uh, enterprise licenses for their open source projects. So uh, so, so so a pretty popular example of this is actually Kubeflow. So Kubeflow is a very famous open source project, and then you also have an enterprise version of Kubeflow. So the enterprise version of Kubeflow is not actually owned by Google, uh, but you also have an enterprise version of Kubeflow. A pretty popular company that does that is actually Aricto. So that is how they do it, providing enterprise licenses. You might know about the pretty popular project called Perl. So how does a developer of Perl make money? So among other sources you might have, of course. Uh, so the author of Perl also shared that he also provides enterprise licenses for Perl, and enterprise licenses can work multiple ways. You could just have enterprise versions. So TensorFlow has a version called TensorFlow Enterprise. So you could just have that, or you could have enterprise support, which is the way Curl works, or you could provide hosted version of your open source project, which is how a lot of other companies out there also work. Uh, yeah, there is a lot of things out there, and a lot of folks also raise money for their open source project through crowdfunding, and this is essentially a way for people who use the open source project to show some love to the developers. And if you think this might not be that big of a thing, so you might have heard of the project called Homebrew. So Homebrew actually funds its maintainers and the whole organization just through GitHub sponsors. And you might know about some other projects like Redux or even Vue.js. So all of these very popular projects, which have thousands of stars, are actually all funded through crowdfunding campaigns. So these are definitely some of the ways to make money through open source. And yeah, uh, uh, these are some of the ways I've experienced as well.
Thank
So, in my opinion, Abhi, would you like to add something?
Yeah, sure. So the question is how to make money from open source. So see the things that there are different ways. So first way, the most hard way, I will say, build your own project and make that project in such a way that it is affecting all the, like, it will be helping all the corporates or the established corporates, I will say. And they hire you as to work on the project. This is something what happened with Fast API creator. He created Fast API, and people were liking it, and it got famous because of its helping nature and productivity for the developer writing APIs in Python. So he got hired by one of the German-based companies to work on his own open source projects, getting as a director of engineering there, and that's how, like, he gets paid heavily for just maintaining his project. So, and that's what you, one of the hardest and like most effective ways, I will say, to earn good money in open source. But if you are talking about to make money in one go or something, there are different open source programs. I won't say they're for making money, but they pay you for your time commitments. So you can try applying for those. There are their GSOC, then G outreach. You can search for them on online. So will be getting more information about that, how much money and how do they get it. So that's about earning money. And one more thing that these days I am finding really like quite inspiring is about Apprite and Supabase. They're competitors, but I don't belong to any of them, so I can talk freely about them, both of them. So here the thing is, they have their own open source code, like the whole code is source is open, and they have their hosted versions too. So they are getting paid for their hosted version. They have their customers, and they got nice funding, in fact. So yes, you can completely like get money from open source, but it's just you have to put all the hard work, all those nights to build such projects, to build no. What the problem here is, you need to get the experience of what corporate people need, and that means you need to have the experience for the corporate roles, like get into some companies or do internship in some even mid-sized companies like Postman, or it can be any US based company or any mid-scale startup led by any ex Google or ex Twitter or anyone like that who has a stronghold in the like who has a stronghold in the whole industry. So try to like search for such roles, and as you know, being being a student, you can, what you can do is contracting engineering. That is, you are not employed by anyone. You are, as a contract engineer, you are just writing code, and you have to do it like you are waking up till late nights doing the code and pushing it. It's just like work only, but it's a contract work. And that's again comes under a freelancer category or self-employed category. So you can do that as a student, and when you are like when you graduate, you can be a full-time employee over there too. So there you get to know about corporate things and how things work actually. So yeah, that's pretty much way like how to earn money through open source. Yep. Can move to next question.
So
Yes,
I
sure.
do have a question. Like, since code is publicly available, so how do maintainers make sure that it is secure or not? Like, I guess I think like you guys do know about it. Like you are contributing to open source from quite long time. So yeah.
I didn't get you what you mean.
Oh, I was about to say
See,
the same. Could you please repeat?
yeah, so see the code base which we do have, like it's publicly available. So how do you or how do you as a maintainer of the code make sure that it is secure? Like someone can't get into it or something like that. I hope it's clear
So
now.
yeah, I got your question. So I'll go first, then I'll give it to Rishit. So there are, when like if you are on GitHub, like particularly whenever you are maintaining any GitHub repo, you're putting it some GitHub source, like it may be a GitHub or it may be a GitLab. They have different configurations. They have different levels for users. So on particular user, only suppose there's a user group admin, and admin can only push the changes to main or any other branches. So they have branch specific things. So you can create a branch for your own and you can do the things out. It's not affecting the whole code base. But if an admin merges your branch to the main or development, there it has the changes done, then it is affecting the code base. So that's how the things are. It is about branch level changes. There are restrictions put. You may know about GitHub Actions. These are again nice things. So yeah, over to Rishit.
हाँ
So
मेरे पास
there
है
is
रुक जा एक बार
definitely the aspect of merging code,
जरूरी है
but there's also the aspect of running your CI or something like that. while you're maintaining an open source project, which can be a bit difficult, and a lot of seemingly bad stuff has happened uh, due to this, and the whole aspect of supply chain security is just due to uh, uh, CI running on untrusted code. So there are a lot of ways to tackle this. A lot of tools that allow you to do this, and there are a part of the tools. There are also trust levels in projects. So so a lot of the big projects often have something like when you contribute, you won't have the CI run on your pull request. uh, once a once a maintainer of the project approves that you haven't written something that would maliciously probably fail, probably exploit the CI, then you'd probably have your CI run. And once you become an active contributor for the project, you could have your CI run for every single pull request. So stuff like this is also based on trust levels. Of course, there are a lot of tools for supply chain security, but there are our trust levels also do, and but trust levels also do an awesome work over here.
Rishit and Abir, like speaking of big repositories, so like assuming everyone's almost a new contributor to open source, what is your mindset usually when starting to contribute to these new projects? Like
Yeah.
the code is huge. Do you begin with the documentation, or how should we approach it?
So first of all, whenever the code is huge, one thing that you need to know is probably there are a few things like one thing is pretty much sure that it will be a monorepo. Okay, what is monorepo? Monorepo is something like a project having multiple sub projects. It's just something like you have a folder with different projects. So usually, if you see React codebase, it's also a monorepo. So everything is usually a monorepo, and I will say that everything is under monorepo having a different project. So suppose you are contributing to React DOM, or let's say you have a monorepo say A, and you have three projects under it: A.1, A.2, and A.3. So you are interested in contributing to A.3, so you will look at only A.3. You will not bother about what is in A.1 or A.2. Okay, so this is what, and most important thing, where if 8.3 is again huge, you need to first look at the test cases, because tests are where the things happens, like magic happens. So if there are test cases, just look at those test files and test cases, read about them, then you get to know, okay, this function is doing this. That's my way of tackling out the large code bases. Currently I have a code base of around 105,243, that is 1,05,243 lines. So I know where I have to go, and I just sent a PR to the team. So this is like whole idea is you need not deep dive into the things. You need to just focus on particular specific point where you have to do the change, and that's it. Don't do too much deep dive. So, and one most thing is, suppose you have say a function, let's say a hook. Okay, so usually what we do is a hook to get some data, like use parent data or something like that. Okay, let's name it this. So don't look at that hook now. Okay, use parent data. Okay, fine, that's the hook. Don't deep dive into the hook, and just focus on what values you get from there. So use parent data, you get the value of name, you get the father's name, mother's name, and suppose grandfather's name. Okay, you get the names, and just focus on the names. Don't see the implementation. What as a developer we do, we try to deep dive into the every code, that you should know every code. We try to see the hook code and everything. That's not required. You just need to focus on where you have to push the changes, and that's it. Don't spend too much time on then looking on the hook implementation and all this. So this is what one of the hacks I try to do whenever like do changes to any large code bases, and that's what pretty much it is about. Over to you, Rishit.
Sure, definitely. I don't have anything new to add to this.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
like
night.
the people are discussing
I've got.
about like Linux and all in the chat. Yeah. So yeah, we can go ahead.
Can we just do one last question, please?
Okay, I
Is it
have a
okay?
question.
Yeah, sure. Go on, penguin.
Okay, so being a penguin, you can already see me addressing Linux, right? So my point is, why exclude open source from free? So we should be talking about free and open source, right?
Uh, Sorry, free and open source. As in, sorry, I couldn't get your question.
Free and open.
Would you mind explaining it? Sorry.
Yep. So free and open source means, yeah, free as in freedom, not as in freebies, as Ted Lasso says. Uh, Free as in freedom means you get to see or you get to use all of the components all by yourself without anyone controlling it. That is what means by free.
Uh, yeah, so open source code bases are usually free for anyone to use. Uh,
Mm, not
if that.
exactly. Yep.
Oh, it also depends on the license, but the idea of open source is
Not about the
that
license, but the components of a software. Like if you see Firefox, for example, right? They have certain things inside their browser which are not free. So that's what makes it more.
do you mean something like freemium?
Not freemium, but completely free.
Oh, okay. So what's the question? What's the final question?
So my question is, while talking about open source, we all need to say like we need to actually address free and open source. Just like when Linux people like not generally Linux, but anything which is related to freedom. I'm not any propaganda here, but it's actually a movement, free software movement. So that is what I'm talking about.
Okay, that sounds interesting, and a lot of uh, that actually sounds really interesting. A lot of projects don't have complete freedom on using the software. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, we should most certainly also promote projects which are using these.
Yeah. So even if you see a lot of things, I gave a best example, uh, Firefox. Firefox has certain tracking things inside their browser still today. But after you harden Firefox, something called as hardening, you know. So after that, it becomes a very good browser for privacy and security.
Awesome, got you. Uh, oh,
Yeah. So, like we have discussed a lot about open source and all the stuff, like how should we contribute and all the things. Uh, I would like to know just more about like in 2 3 minutes, like just about open source student program, not only like BSOC and all, just like MLH and some student programs in general, not only open source student programs, just like student programs for the communities, open source communities like MLH, Data Campus Expert, and all the programs. I just wanna know about it, like how does it feel to be the part of these programs, and what are your experiences so far being uh, being in these programs and all. And yeah, sure. So thank you so much, Abir, like for joining us. Like Abir had to go and I really thanks you
Thanks,
from
Vinayak,
entire
for having me.
Blue Learn
Yeah,
team.
yeah. Thanks, Vinayak, for
Yeah,
having me
it
to
was
join
like
up. Yeah, sure.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure. We will
Have a great day,
happy to see
folks.
you in future soon.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
So, Rishit, can you just answer this? Like, I
Sure.
was talking about like student programs, not only open source programs. So, yeah.
Sure, there are actually quite a lot of student programs out there, and I would definitely recommend you to take a look at the missions of these student programs. If that is something that excites you, then you can most certainly be a part of these programs. These give you extended mentorship, or help with leading your own communities, forming your communities, just being a part of open source communities in general, or a lot of them can even could even be ambassadors, which are not necessarily open source. So these could definitely help you, and you should definitely take a look at the mission of these open source programs. See if that's what you're excited about, and uh, probably be a part of them.
Okay, got it. So, can you just name some of the programs?
Sure. So actually, the slides I had put in had a list of programs I personally have been a part of and I loved a lot. So MLH Fellowship is one. GitHub Campus Experts. Uh, there's also Google Codin. Um, so Google Codin is similar to Summer of Code, but for folks who are less than 18 years old. So Google Codin or Google Summer of Code. That has been a really nice experience for me as well. And apart of that, there are also a couple of other programs, but these are definitely some of the best programs I've been a part of.
Okay, got it. So, anyone else have any question?
Uh,
Rishit?
I'll also, yeah,
Uh-huh.
sorry, go on.
Yeah,
Yeah, are you like there free to take one last question?
Sure.
So, like, how do you manage time and everything? And was there a point that open source was getting too overwhelming or stressful for you?
I'll let you know once it gets overwhelming or stressful. But uh,
okay.
so the idea is that a lot of what I've been doing just comes out of passion. So I'm actually passionate for the projects. Actually passionate about creating my own projects, creating my own open source projects. So and since my motivator is passion, I think I don't need to manage time. It just comes along the way. So yeah, I've like never personally had a lot of time management stuff to worry about, and that's just my personal stuff. So I would definitely I recommend you ask someone. I might not be the best person to comment on this. I've personally just contributed to projects whenever I felt like had no schedule per se. So I kind of personally think that putting a schedule, I need to make one open source contribution every day kind of kills creativity for me. So uh, I just make a contribution whenever I seem to be making the best use of my time. So yeah. Uh, so that was about the question, and I'll also have to drop off now. But it was
Yeah,
nice talking to you all.
yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining in, Rishit. Yeah,
Sure. And
hope
feel
to
free to
hope
ask
to
me any
meet
other
you.
questions online. So, yeah,
Yeah. You can just share your Twitter link or something like that in the chat so everyone can get connect with you.
sure, I'll do that. So, feel free to ask me any other questions or just talk or chat about random stuff. So, I'll just put it there. Okay. Uh,
Sure.
yeah. That's all. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you so much for joining in, Rishit. Yeah.
Sure.
So guys, it was all about the session. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned more about open source. So anyone of you wanna share their journey regarding open source? Anyone, or anyone who wanna speak anything about coding in general? They can just speak, or we can just end the session. So is anyone there like Promjet, Chinmay, Deba, Jagdish, Kira, Navya, Pavan, Sanika, Satvika, Ted? Okay, so I guess we can end the session. Like if anyone don't have any question or something like that. Also, just one more thing. Like we will be starting BlueLearn hackathon soon. It will be start tomorrow only. So I will suggest you all to register in this hackathon. I will just share the link of the hackathon in coding and tech channel. You can just go through it. Yes, so do participate in the hackathon. Yeah. Okay, so bye guys. See ya.